El Nino is still doing its thing, even though it's just passing its peak. I'm meteorologist Don Paul. Welcome to my podcast, Don Paul's Bits o' Blather on weather, climate, and occasionally some humor. Not much humor to what El Nino is doing and will continue to do, even though it is probably just past its peak amplitude. It has been an extraordinarily strong El Nino, and it has behaved as strong El Ninos usually do. The last strong El Nino in 2015-16 did not produce flooding rains in California. This one did, and there's more coming. By later next weekend, more major Pacific storms will be plowing into the West Coast, focusing especially on California, first northern and central, then southern California. And of course, even though several dry days are lined up in a row, there's not any real room in the soil on that hilly terrain for additional heavy rain. So there is the likelihood more potentially life threatening mudslides will be redeveloping by early next week. On the East Coast, a strong storm system is heading toward the middle Atlantic seaboard for tomorrow morning, and for a change in what has become a rare event for New York City, the heaviest snow with this system in the New York area will not be in the interior, Rockland, Westchester County, northwestern New Jersey. It will instead, because of the track of the storm, be over New York City and Long Island, as well as southern New England. And this storm is going to produce water laden heavy snow, which can bring down some tree limbs because there are going to be some strong winds to go with it, and some coastal flooding is likely. But the actual accumulations may not sound that impressive, on the order of 4 to 8 inches in Manhattan, maybe 5 to 10 inches out toward Queens, and could be 8 to 12 inches as you get into Nassau County, Long Island. But this, as I said, water laden snow, there will be some melting occurring due to the very weight of the snow. There's compression, and that produces heat at the base of the accumulated snow. So, no powder from this, and it is going to be one messy storm. If anyone is planning on flying into or out of Newark, LaGuardia, JFK on Tuesday morning, watch out. There are going to be major delays, if not cancellations. Conditions will begin to improve in the New York area by early afternoon. It's going to be a short-lived event. It's not going to last that long, starting as a mix late Monday night, changing to slushy snow by morning. In the western New York area, this storm originally looked like it might bring a few inches near the Pennsylvania line, but now models have taken the track of the storm even farther away from western New York. So we're going to be unscathed. There may be a few light snow showers really unrelated to the coastal storm in the afternoon, but nothing significant. And as for what kind of winter this has been, I think you've all noticed, except for that brutal week in January, it has been extraordinarily mild. The mean temperature at the Buffalo airport for February through this date is now 12.6 degrees above the average mean. That's extraordinary. And in fact, we are lined up for one of the warmest meteorological winters. That's December, January, and February on record for Buffalo. Unless we get unexpectedly cold weather in the latter part of February, and there will be chilly days, that's where we're headed. And it's not just Western New York. Minnesota, one of the warmest, if not the warmest winter on record, a real snow drought. And even in Western New York, there's been a true snow drought in Rochester. Central New York, a snow drought in Syracuse. And even in Maine, Bangor, Maine has had only 25 inches of snow this winter. Buffalo is at 53 and a half inches or so. We're running 15 and a half inches below average. We had that big deficit really shrink during that one really bad week in January, but now the deficit's growing again, and no major snow is lined up for this week. We could be seeing some minor accumulating snow Thursday night, at least at higher elevations, and some weak potential lake effect, but not the kind that's going to disrupt any commutes on Friday, as far as we can tell early in the week. And then our temperatures will continue to run on the seasonably chilly side. Looks like maybe a cold upper 20s day on Saturday. The average high this time of the year is 32 or 33. So even then, we're not way off the mark, and that little cold shot doesn't last. Temperatures go back slightly above average by early next week. And so, while El Nino is just past its peak, it is providing enough heat energy for these Pacific storms. This storm that's now moving toward the middle Atlantic cities, and especially New York and Boston, really got a lot of its energy from El Nino's influence in the southern branch of the jet stream, not the polar jet stream. And there are more storms to come off the Pacific, as I said, by next weekend. El Nino is going to really fade more rapidly once we get into spring. Between April and June, it's expected to go back to a neutral southern oscillation. And then by the time we get into the summer, transition over to La Nina. Now, La Nina, combined with all the oceanic heat that's been amplified by El Nino, could spell the potential for a very active hurricane season in the Atlantic and Gulf Hurricane Basin. I'll keep you updated on that. But that's the big picture on this podcast episode. Thanks for listening this far. Please follow, please share. And again, this podcast is available on virtually all the platforms. Talk to you very soon.